last night I did a bunch of mowing with a lawnmower, but there's definitely a few sections in the garden that got ahead of me. This section behind me, for instance. So now I'm going to mow it with my scythe and fork it off for hay. I might actually just fork it into a windrow and keep it moist, and then I can use it for mulch. If I let it dry, then I'll have to put it in the hay house. I've also got my orchard over here that needs to be mowed. It's a perfect time for mowing, early in the morning. You want the grass to be a little bit wet so that the blade will cut through it a little more easily. This is far superior to a weed whacker. This is a European style scythe from Scythe Supply, which is a company in Perry, Maine, made locally and measured specifically for me. These measurements are actually taken from Scythe Supply. They come to the Common Ground Fair every year, and they took my measurements and made this specifically for my height and arm length and everything else, and my reach to the ground. So it's a very specific tool. I love this tool, take really good care of it, and it's a lot different from the American style, which has a curved snap, has a curved handle and is completely inefficient and poorly designed. It was designed to be mass produced. These, again, are specific to the user. So this fits me and only me. But I really love this tool, and this is something that I enjoy doing. It's very meditative, mowing with a scythe. And I like the sound. It's a beautiful day out, and I'm gonna get a great product. There are definitely some things for which I need to use a weed whacker. Around fence posts, for instance, and around other things like trees, around our stone walls. And actually there are people who are so good at mowing that they can actually do that with this. They can mow the lawn with this. I could do it around our stone walls, but I really don't want to damage the blade on this. So I'm happy to use a weed whacker for that little tiny bit of grass that I need to mow. But this I use for my hay and my mulch in here in the orchard. So time to get started.
As I've mentioned in previous videos, it is important to stretch before using your body to do something strenuous or unusual. Mowing with a scythe is not at all strenuous. In fact, if you're straining and feel tired when you're done, your technique is incorrect. However, it's definitely an unusual task, so it's good to get your muscles warm before diving in. Your arms do almost nothing. All they really do is control the height of your blade from the ground and keep the tip of the blade from rising or digging into the soil. If you've ever seen Karate Kid 2, you have a basic understanding of the motion required to mow with a European scythe. Before I begin mowing, I always hone the blade's edge. I also hone before I put the scythe away when I'm finished mowing. I don't think I have a reason for this. I don't know if it makes a difference, but it's a habit I've developed, and I like to think it keeps my blade nice and clean. Periodically, I stop mowing and hone again. The span of time between these breaks depends on the material being mowed. There are several types of blade available for this tool. The blade I have is sort of an all-purpose blade. You can't cut thick brush like you can with a brush blade, but you can cut more than grass. Once you've gained some experience, you learn when to hone. The tool will tell you, or rather, the grass that isn't being cut will tell you. Honing is not sharpening. Honing is realigning the edge of the blade, which is very thin and prone to bending in minute ways all along the length. Sharpening requires a different set of tools and is not generally done in the field, though I believe in the old days when all mowing was done with scythes, they actually did have their tools and setups to sharpen in the field. When honing a scythe, there is a correct way to hold your whetstone. I learned at the Common Ground Fair from the folks who made this scythe. You need to keep your thumb and fingers back from the honing edge for, what I hope you can see from this video, are obvious reasons. Apparently, I unearthed something delightful in which Ziggy is happy to roll. Ah, the life of a farm puppy.
Well, I wasn't paying attention, and I almost mowed the hops plant that I planted the other day. So Ziggy stepped on it. Get out! So I'm gonna go the other way because I don't want to cut these sunflowers and hops plants. So since I'm close to the end anyway, I'm just gonna come down here to this end and mow towards the fence instead of away from it.
After mowing for an hour or so in the morning, we spent some family time together away from the homestead. After dinner, once the kids were in bed, I decided it was time to stop procrastinating and finish fixing what I call the tiny house. Our smallest hoop house was rebuilt last fall, but I never get a chance to put plastic on it before the snow fell. Now that the peppers, basil, and celery are planted, I'd like to get this covered. First, I need to affix the end wall lumber to the metal frame, which I can do now that I've realigned the foundations and the hoop house is back to its original dimensions.
Sun's going down. We're gonna be gone most of the weekend for family stuff, so I'm gonna try to do a little bit of extra work tonight before it gets too dark and fork up some of this hay that I cut this morning. Have to be a little bit careful on this plastic so I don't puncture it. I cut it onto the plastic on purpose so it would dry a little bit faster on the black plastic, but that's definitely a consideration this evening when I'm using the pitchfork. I don't want to puncture it and make more holes in it. So what I'm going to do is just make a series of piles along the path here, and I'll come by maybe tomorrow if I have time before we head out and pick it up on my cart. Take it where it's needed. I'm going to use this for mulch, I've decided. But I'm not sure where. Depends on how much I get, I guess.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together.
So the trick with grass is you want it to be thick, but not too thick. And the reason for that is, if it's too thick, it'll start to ferment, and it actually will become slimy. It'll smell badly if it's disturbed, and it probably will be disturbed because as you're walking on it when it's slimy, it'll be slippery, and you'll push it aside with your foot. So the trick is, again, to be a little bit judicious, but you also don't want it to be so thin that it's pointless and weeds sprout up through it. I'm out of cardboard, otherwise I would put the cardboard down first, and that would actually act as a weed barrier, and the grass clippings could be much thinner. Those would be just to cover the cardboard so it's you can't see it, and also to keep it from blowing away in the wind. I'm out of cardboard, so I have to use a little bit thicker layer of grass clippings. That's alright, I got plenty of those. Well, that looks pretty good. The beans have come up around the sunflowers. This one up here, they're just starting to sprout. On these ones, there it is. I did see one on these that has come up. So I was worried for a little while that they weren't going to be viable. And those are my Vortex pole beans, which would be a bummer because they're really good. I've also got a bunch of kale that's volunteering here, where I had some kale last year and it went to seed, and I did that on purpose so that I could save the seed. And what I was hoping to do was, when it came up, transplant it, which I've already done, but I'm still getting lots and lots of new volunteers. So I'm gonna have to stay ahead of that. I'll save out what I want. So this is where my beans are planted, and here's a kale right here. There's lots of those coming up. Here's another little one. So I got tons of those in this place where the kale was last year. Kale can be a weed too if it grows where you don't want it and it starts to take over. I've got 2 rows of beans there, and if it gets thick with kale, that will prevent air from circulating between the beans and they'll start to rot and get moldy, which I obviously don't want. So I'm gonna keep ahead of that, hopefully.
It's so beautiful, you and me. We meant to be in the great outdoors.